Silence and Star Song presents a new series of experimental audio programs.
Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. This is Howard Carter on board the Exxon Pacific rig Arkham. I have barricaded myself in the radio room and I have a bomb. If anyone attempts to break down this door, I will send this ship back to the abyss. This was my first deep sea assignment with Exxon Pacific. Only the top 5% of my class was qualified to be posted to a vessel as large and prestigious as the Arkham, a floating and self-propelled oil rig. We were the best. We were beyond dedicated to career and success, far too dedicated for a family or love. Such attachments would only slow down our ascent to the upper chambers of one of the largest, most powerful corporations in the world. We boarded a tanker, Marianas, bound for the Arkham at Nemo Point, the most remote place in the Pacific between Australia and South America. My classmates and I talked endlessly about the opportunities awaiting us. When the captain announced that we could see the Arkham with the naked eye, we rushed up on deck. Seeking a better view, I climbed one of the unmanned point defense turrets and glanced through the scope. I saw our escort frigates shadowing us on the port and starboard. On our bow lay another tanker a few kilometers ahead. It was part of an endless train arriving with supplies and personnel and leaving filled with that liquid gold. Each tanker was bound for one of the Exxon Pacific artificial islands off the coast of Australia and Chile. I looked at the horizon and in the distance I saw the Arkham, the largest self-propelled vessel ever created. A crew of 10,000 men and women all working together to accomplish the impossible. It was a feat of human engineering in the remotest part of the world. Towers of steel adorned the vessel like a cathedral of industry. Flying buttresses of yellow and red pipes stretched down like the skeletal remains of a prehistoric monster. It filled me with wonder. No European cathedral, or even the ancient Hindu temples of the East, could compare to its size and grandeur. Yet we were the privileged few who could see it, who could walk its decks and visit its shrines to modernity and civilization. And so there I was, a small speck in the ocean and an insignificant cog in the machine. The tanker dropped us off, took on oil, and began its incredibly long journey from Australia to Chile for processing. Immediately when we arrived, we were set to work. After the oil shortage crisis, the discovery and refinement of oil had become the civilized world's top priority. I could feel how vital, even how desperate our jobs were. The oil could not be pumped up fast enough. It felt like our gargantuan ship was all that stood between civilization and barbarism. Sentries patrolled the gangwalks and manned their turrets, ever vigilant for privateers looking to disrupt or steal what we had toiled so hard for. The Arkham had a constant rate of replenishment of new crews coming and going, but that was supposed to be regulated. One day one of my supervisors did not show up for duty. It did not take long before a replacement was found, but the excuse was strange. My new supervisor told me,
"His time was up. You got the last transport out."
But he had just started before I arrived. He had plenty of time.
I don't have time for the new guy's questions. Know your role and shut your hole.
I did just that, trying to focus my mental energy on the task at hand, and not someone else's schedule. Perhaps he'd been involved in corporate espionage. A few days after that, a fire broke out on the forward starboard side. I saw the blaze from my office window in the radio room. 5 men had been killed in the fire, including one of my class, Josh Dawes. I had no idea what he would have been doing on that side of the platform anyway. He should have been asleep in his berth in the bridge tower. This time I didn't speak up, but noted how strange it was. As the weeks went on, I made friends with coworkers, some of whom had been here quite a while. I noticed just how frightened they seemed, paranoid even. I noticed some of them would disappear in either an accident or a last-minute transfer. One day at lunch, I spotted Miranda Coleman, a girl from my class. She was eating alone, but I noticed a few people watching her from different tables. A feeling of dread fell over me, but I sat down next to her. She at first jumped when I put my tray down, but after recognizing me, she breathed a sigh of relief.
You scared me, Howard.
What's eating you?
Nothing. It's just... this place isn't what I thought it'd be.
How do you mean?
All that optimism, changing the world, saving humanity. It's like it was all tosh. Thought we were supposed to be working together. Feels like we're trying to stab each other in the back.
I had sensed a kind of competition, even in the radio room. I'd figured it was all because of how hard it was to land a post on the Arkham. But there had been an edge I did not expect with my coworkers. It was not just a race to accomplish something, but also a mean-spirited desire to see our coworkers be noticed or singled out for their failure. More than that, there was an abundance of employees. The radio room staff could be cut at least in half and be just if not more productive. It was a weird combination of cutthroat and bureaucratic bloat. I don't think there's anything we can do about it. It's just the way the ship is run. You have to be the best.
That's not everything. I think people are being punished.
Punished?
Yes. I've noticed people disappearing. They're not showing up for work. They're not transferring off.
Miranda, how could you know that?
I screenshot a couple of rosters, compared them to their arrivals. Several of them had as much as 6 months left in their rotation.
I thought about my missing supervisor. And then a question hit me. Miranda, you're in personnel. How many people would we need to run this rig 24/7?
From what I've seen, we could do it with 3,000 people, maybe less.
But this rig was specifically designed to fit 10,000 quite comfortably. Now, why would the company crew a rig for more than they needed to? That's a waste of personnel and material.
I don't know. There's almost too many people to keep track of. It's easy for people to fall through the cracks. Meet me in the personnel department tonight. I have an idea. Make sure no one follows you.
After my shift, I left the radio room. There was some fear in the air that I did not quite understand. The stars which should have burned the brightest were blotted out by the operating lights of the deck. Thin observation towers climbed into the air like the leafless limbs of dead trees. They glowed red to ward off airplanes and maintain the lookout's night vision. On the horizon, I saw the lights of a distant ship wink out. Perhaps it had crossed the horizon, or it had sunk in a disaster so distant there would be no one to save them. I kept checking to make sure I was not followed as I made my way down from the radio room to personnel on the other side of the bridge tower. I took the stairs to avoid meeting anyone in the elevator. I gave a knock on Miranda's office door. She opened her door in a wide smile, draping her arms around my shoulders. Pleasantly surprised, I placed my hands on her hips and she pulled me inside. When I closed the door, she became as cold and calculating as I had always known her. It was a cover, of course. Any guard who noticed us would think we had a romantic rendezvous. Something that was technically against company policy, but out here everyone looked the other way. My heart betrayed me for a minute as I tried to refocus on our task. I had not realized how lonely and isolated I had become. "What's your plan, Coleman?"
Well, Mr. Carter, I thought we might look at a select wet dataset.
Work efficiency trackers were the microchips placed under our palm skin to safely track our hours and position. Not only were they required, but they were received upon graduation from the Exxon Pacific Training Academy, like a rite of passage. They allowed us to get into our respective offices and sign on to our computers without a password. Miranda was part of personnel, so she had clearance to review all WET datasets.
Only security has access to the live tracking, but I can see what they did and where they last signed off. Let's look here at Josh Dawes from our class. He arrived on the Marianas just like us. His last login was 10 days ago. I do not see a transfer order of any kind. He has no PTO, he's not sick, he's just gone.
Maybe he was a spy.
A spy who went through the academy? Josh didn't seem like the type.
I didn't know him very well. I suppose if someone offers you enough money or a better position at BP or somewhere else, most people have their price.
I don't buy it. Here, let's look at another one. Ben Berry arrived 6 months ago. Last login was 30 plus days ago. No transfer record. No termination date. Nothing.
Where was his last login?
A pump room. Deck 0.
And Dawes?
Pump room. Deck 0.
The same one?
What is going on?
We have to get down there. The whole rig could be in danger. We left Miranda's office one at a time, promising to meet at Deck 0. We took different routes to the same area. I took the stairs and she would take the elevator all the way down to Deck 0, which was the lowest part of the ship, well below the waterline. It took me almost an hour taking a non-direct route to the lower levels and checking to see that I wasn't followed. The pump system was fully automated, so we didn't need to worry about others. I opened the hatch to find Miranda waiting for me. No one else was in sight. I locked the hatch behind me and we reached the computer terminal. Miranda flashed her palm over the computer and logged in and accessed the audit trail from the last dates of the 2 missing men.
The strangest part is that they didn't do anything when they logged on. They logged on for no more than a minute, logged back off. I don't understand. Why come all the way down here to log on for a minute?
Unless it was a signal.
A signal?
As she said that, we heard a crowd of footsteps approaching. Miranda hurried to log off, but the computer had frozen. I grabbed her by the hand. She looked at me, fear etched into her once cold features. Several guards appeared behind us, followed by several robed men, their hoods covering their faces. I pulled a supply shelf behind us, grabbed Miranda's hand, and dashed down the corridor towards the elevator. Before we reached it, it dinged, and 3 guards stepped out clad in body armor and stun rifles. They leveled their rifles and fired, sending us to the ground in convulsions. And then everything went black. I awoke in darkness, with the feeling of cool air rushing past me and a feeling of descent. I was on an elevator going down. The air stank of salt. I felt the bag over my head. My hands were tied behind my back. A few fingers grabbed my restrained hand, and I realized it was Miranda's. She must have been tied up too, but she was alive and next to me. I held her hand as best I could and felt it shake with terror. It occurred to me that we had been on the lowest level of the Arkham, and yet we were descending. That meant we must be in the pump shaft going down towards the bottom of the Pacific. I surmised that that was probably where the missing people had gone. No one would look for them down there, in the unmanned parts of the operation. When the well was abandoned, the bodies would be too. They took the bags off our heads and we gasped for fresh air. The air was not fresh though. It stank like oil and salt and sulfur. We choked on the bitter air. The light was very dim, and we quickly discovered that it was lit by hundreds upon hundreds of candles. Strange etchings and runes decorated the cavernous chamber we were in. The robed figures we had seen earlier were at the center of the room, where the etchings seemed to catch the candlelight in such a way that they glowed. A robed figure stepped forward and brushed back his hood to reveal the face of the commanding officer of the Arkham. Captain Orleans. Several others removed their hoods. They were representatives of Axon Pacific, as well as Burton Hughes and Hansung Heavy Industries. These are the most powerful people on the rig, and some of the richest people in the world. Orleans took a bucket of oily slop and began anointing the other robed men and women, chanting something I didn't understand. And so it was that I discovered the horrible secret of the Arkham, indeed, of the very oil crisis itself. Each night, the black-clad priests were anointed with the bituminous tar before they began their descent into the stinking salt depths. Each night, 14 make the Hajj. 13 return. Their guttural chants begin in time with the wave's rhythm, but as they go down, the fetid shaft coated in slime and the refuse of the ocean, their soundings, I dare not call it song, morph and shift and take up a sickly counterpoint to the tide. Then, at the bottom, the monstrosity. An object I can only call an unholy udder protrudes from the seafloor, encrusted with mollusks and sea waste and tentacled things, yet unknown to biologists. This thing heaves in eternal mockery of woman's breast, disgorging the brown vomit of the deep earth blasted machines that send it back up the shaft to be refined by the Arkham's unwitting crew and dispensed to power plants across the world. They sacrificed Miranda first. At the center of the chamber lay the unspeakable abomination. After the elders of the ship said their ritual and thrust the sacrificial knife into her breast, they splayed her body out on the thing where the tentacles writhed as they touched her. I won't say what happened next, except that they had their fill of her. Then the thing convulsed and the black tar was excreted. The guards brought a large hose over to the udder and it began a sickening, pumping sound. They told me, I don't remember who, told me that during the oil crisis the companies had discovered these creatures and made contact with them. The oil would keep flowing as long as there was a sacrifice every night for each field. It kept the lights on, and it kept whatever lurked beneath satiated. Only some 3,000 crew actually ran this rig, whereas the other 7,000 were mere cattle, doing pointless jobs until their ticket was called. They had said that Miranda and I were to be part of the crew that survived, until we started our investigation. Miranda had to go, but I had a choice. I could stay and sacrifice the next victim, or I could myself be sacrificed. Slaying the next victim would ensure my career advancement on the rig, but I would never be allowed to leave. I could rule in hell or die in hell. Those are my choices. I agreed to participate in tomorrow night's sacrifice. We ascended back towards the rig, leaving the remains of my classmate and horrifying monster behind. Later that night, I was filled with nightmares beyond my comprehension. I kept seeing Miranda, kept hearing the pulsating, writhing terror waiting for me at the bottom of the Pacific. Could I live like this? Killing night after night? I didn't want to die. Part of me still wanted to advance in the company. Maybe I could reach the top and put a stop to it all. They had shown me Miranda's death. It was something so utterly strange that no one would believe me if I reported it. It was far more likely they would frame me for her death. I had nothing. So, to my shame, I went with them that next night. I took the knife and well, you know. I didn't know the man I killed. The others told me it wasn't important, and we should not make friends with the cattle. That very day I was promoted to department head of communications. They figured they had enough on me that I couldn't do anything. They figured I was trapped. They thought I was. But my conscience had other plans. Instead of getting used to the killings, I became more and more deranged. I began slipping away from sanity. Visions of Miranda haunted every sleeping moment. I found myself at the deck railing looking over into the ocean below. I thought about jumping. And then in a moment of clarity, I knew what I had to do. In the radio room, I had detected unauthorized transmissions coming from the Arkham to somewhere a few kilos away. I took over the project and blocked all access to it by my subordinates. I decoded the transmission and discovered that someone in the rig was communicating with a privateer fleet. Instead of reporting it, I made sure the communications were not discovered. They were planning a nighttime assault in an attempt to stall production. It is a known fact that though no proof exists, all privateers are hired by rival companies to disrupt production and ruin shareholder stock. A single disruption for more than 12 hours can cause a massive crisis in the delicate supply chain. No privateer had dreamed of hitting a rig as big or well-armed as the Arkham, but it seemed that times were becoming more desperate. I timed my plan to coincide with the chaos that would ensue. That night was tonight. Earlier tonight, we descended again into the depths with our sacrifice drugged and prepared. It was another female. The first one since Miranda, actually. A chance to redeem myself. No one else seemed to notice. I recognized her. She was a low-ranking radio operator named Veronica. She worked under me, and now I was to be the hand that slew her. My hands shook even as they held the sacrificial knife. I reached the bottom and I checked my watch. Any minute now. We dragged her towards the main chamber where that thing waited for its next sacrifice. She was too drugged to scream, but was awake enough to struggle against her bonds. The attack had not commenced. I would not kill this woman. Desperately, I tried to think of a way to kill or injure all the guards and escape. The chanting began, and I readied myself. Just then, the alarm went off, ringing down the miles-long shaft. I breathed a sigh of relief.
What is it?
Our communications say we spotted privateers.
Carter, finish the job. We'll return to the surface.
I nodded as the crowd departed, leaving one guard, myself, and the sacrifice. I ordered the guard to help me with the girl, and as he reached down to grab her, I stabbed him with the sacrificial knife. I took his sidearm and stun rifle and dragged his body to the tentacles. The guard was still alive as they reached up and grasped him. I looked away, never having gotten used to the sight. I placed a makeshift pipe bomb under the pump and lowered the shaft onto the monstrous udder as it began its rhythmic pumping. I tried to slap Veronica awake. She was still groggy but able to stand. I called the elevator and we ascended towards the surface. Once we'd reached Deck 0, I sabotaged the lift system so that no one could return. I could hear the alarm much more clearly along with the sounds of the Arkham's guns firing. Explosions and the shouts of battle murmured high above us. We took an elevator up to the main deck where I cut Veronica's bonds and hid her in a lifeboat, hoping she had enough sense to pull the release when she came to. The hallway I was taken to the bridge tower had been sealed off in the battle. I would have to go outside. I opened the door and was greeted by the repeating sound of the 100mm cannons firing into the night. Tracer rounds burned holes in the dark as they struck water. Suddenly, the area was illuminated by spotlights, and I saw 3 destroyers off our starboard bow returning fire on us. A gun turret exploded above me as I ran to escape falling debris. I slipped on a wet spot and almost fell over the railing. Below me, I spotted a privateer submarine surfacing. Large missile tubes opened up and men came climbing out. They were preparing to board us. Ahead of me, a .50 cal opened up on the submarine, cutting down several hostiles. I sprinted across the deck and made it to the armory at the base of the bridge. The lockers were wide open. I gathered several magazines and a few grenades still in their racks. I took the elevator up the tower, but was stopped halfway. I got off on deck 30 and looked up to see a raging inferno above me. The elevators were automatically shut off. I found a service ladder on the far side of the tower and began to climb. By the time I reached the top floor where the radio room was, I could see that the privateers were beginning to withdraw. Thankfully, the radio tower had not been hit, and I could still get a clear transmission through. I pulled the pin on my grenade and burst into the room. I fired several rounds with my sidearm into the ceiling. My subordinates vacated the room quickly, and I barricaded myself in here. So, now you see why I did what I did. I can't live with myself knowing what I know. I can't stay sane knowing what I know, and now you all know too. There's no going back. This is for Miranda and all the others that Exxon Pacific sacrifices on each rig every night all over the world. And not just Exxon Pacific, but every other company. Those things down there need to be buried, even if it does send us back to the Stone Age. I hear the guards at the door. Captain Orleans, if you're listening to this, you're already too late. The bomb I placed at the base will ignite whatever it is you're sucking up from the seafloor, and it will travel all the way up to the Arkham. Your only chance now is to abandon ship. This is for Miranda.
Echo, Papa, Nemo, listener, calling Arkham. Come in. Echo, Papa, Nemo, listener, calling Arkham. Come in. Echo, Papa, Nemo, listener, calling Arkham. Come in. We hope you enjoyed tonight's episode. Please press like and subscribe to our YouTube. Be sure to check out our website, follow us on Twitter, and check out our Discord. If you like this production, we're sure you'll enjoy the strange tales and high adventure of Volume 2, Issue 1 of Silence and Starsong. Volume 2 is available on Kindle and pre-order on Amazon. Be sure to pick up a copy and leave a review. Script by T.R. Alexander, Carter by Carson Spratt, Miranda by Lauren Dorman, Guard and Officer by Kek Des, Captain Orleans and Comms by Dave Kolhoff.